Hello and welcome to my first webinar broadcast session. My name is Donna Duffield and I am a public speaker. Generally I give talks live internationally, and today is my first webinar session with a view to teaching internationally now on the internet. Today's first talk is a talk on conscious eating, but in actual fact it is a test session just to potentially even out any technical or software problems that I may have using the webinars. So today's talk is on conscious eating. And just to give you a brief overview of my experience in this area, I'm 39 years of age now, and I have been teaching in this area, qualified from the age of 17 in fitness and health and nutrition. And then I went on to qualifying in at degree level in an undergraduate and a master's degree a few years later to understand the psychology behind eating and behaviors in general. So I teach many different subjects on mindfulness and well-being, and one of those subjects is eating. I have been I taught as a personal trainer, and I taught as a nutritionist, and I also teach as a psychologist now on one-to-ones. I also teach in group sessions, and I give talks in different organizations. So to begin then, my first talk, which should last about half an hour, I'm going to give a talk on, first of all in this session is to understand why we eat. I don't think people's problems with eating is necessarily down to not knowing what to eat. Most of the time it's due to eating for the wrong reasons. So first and foremost, there is a prominent saying, and it is food is either the best form of medicine or it is your slowest form of poison. And what that means is that food has been given to you by life to sustain the body and to enable the body to work correctly, and it is at its best. This is fine, and this works perfectly when you know what to eat and you know how to eat. But it can also be a contamination for the body when people eat for the wrong reasons. So, for example, when people eat for emotional reasons, people will tend to not only eat the wrong food, but they will also overeat, and they will eat at the wrong times. And then food becomes harmful to the body. So first and foremost, for people to use food for the right reason, which is to aid health, you need to understand why you're eating. So many reasons, for many reasons, people often use food the same way that an alcoholic uses alcohol, or a smoker uses cigarettes, or a gambler turns to gambling. For many different types of addictions, is another way of explaining it. Food becomes an addiction, insofar as that people use food as a substance or as a method to run away from pain and to seek pleasure as opposed to pain. So what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is that when people have a bad day, feel frustration, feel stress, feel emotional, that they will often turn to chocolate, or they will turn to different types of food depending on what your tastes are, and eat in order to try and make yourself feel better. And of course, food is not able to make you do that. That you don't feel better. Maybe for a few seconds, you get a release of the pain because your experience of pleasure through food is coming through in the taste buds. So you're experiencing a form of pleasure. But afterwards, when the food has been consumed, the pain still remains. And not only does the pain remain, but the mind then usually turns against the host, and you experience a sensation of guilt. So not only did you probably consume something that wasn't necessarily that good for the body because you were seeking pleasure, you're also, and so therefore you weren't eating because you were hungry. The mind also then made you feel guilty for it, so now you're experiencing more emotional pain. And now you have two types of contamination. One is improper food and eating at the wrong time when the body doesn't need it. And two is the emotional pain of guilt and feeling bad. This can go much deeper into hating oneself, and feeling angry and frustrated and despair, because of the reasons associated with eating for the wrong reasons. Society telling you that it's greedy, that you know that it's wrong, that you know it's not for the right reasons, that you're going to put on weight. So in actual fact, you know, people seek food in order to avoid pain, and to get pleasure. But the reality of it is, as I just explained, the pleasure doesn't last more than a few seconds, and then it turns to pain, psychological and emotional pain, and it also turns to bodily contamination and ill health. So this is the contamination of the body through eating for the wrong reason. So what do you do then in order to eat for the right reasons? Basically, what needs to start happening is people really need to start allowing themselves to feel emotional pain. So stress arises or pain arises, and immediately, rather than seeking something to counteract that, we need to get used to feeling that pain and allowing it to be there in the body. What happens is with this acceptance is that you actually release the pain, and it dissolves, as opposed to using something to run from the pain, and then it doesn't dissolve, it actually stays in the body, ready to join the next time when you feel emotional pain. Everything that you haven't dealt with in the past comes up to join the pain that you're feeling in this moment or tomorrow's moment, and so it feels much worse than it did yesterday. So it is to learn as a being to feel pain as opposed to running from it, and then food will be used for the right reason. So what is the right reason for eating? The right reason for eating is to nourish the body, and to for health reasons. The body is made up of various different body parts: the heart and the lungs and the brain, blood, immune system, your skin, your nails, your hair, your sight, etc., etc. And many different types of food that you, particularly the ones that are grown in the ground, are needed to nourish those parts of the body. So, for example, iron, which is derived from meat, and it's derived from spinach, it can be derived from many different sources, beans, is needed for healthy blood cells, and it's also needed in order to convert the food that you eat into energy, so that when you're eating a banana, for example, it's actually used for energy. So iron is needed for that reason. Your immune system is needed in order to fight off any kind of illnesses and diseases that would be flying around in the air continually. And especially in today's world, where you've got years of abuse of antibiotics and people's immune system is very low, we actually need to boost our immune system. And in order to not only boost the immune system, but we need to actually allow our immune system to start working for us, which the body does naturally. It is built to last a certain amount of years. But in order to do that, we've got to be able to fight off illnesses. And currently, as it stands right now, the immune system has actually is starting to degenerate because of the abuse of antibiotics, for one thing, and also stress. The stress also destroys the immune system, and currently the life that we lead and the psychological condition that we find ourselves in increases the stress in the body, and that targets and destroys the immune system. So what we're finding is many people now are suffering with colds, flu symptoms, stomach bugs, anything that's going around. You'll find your neighbor or even yourself, if someone sneezes in China, as I often say, you'll find that you'll get it. And what is the reason for this? The reason for it is an indication that you have a low immune system, so your body is not able to fight. You might argue, oh well, I can just go to the doctors for more antibiotics, but in actual fact, what you'll find is, and what scientifically what we're finding is, that the antibiotics are becoming immune themselves to fighting off the current conditions, illnesses and diseases that are around, because we're finding that we've got superbugs now that over a period of time have evolved and become used to the antibiotics. So our immune system now, or our use of drugs in order to keep ourselves healthy, is not actually working. So it is all the more important now for us to be aware of aiding ourselves naturally with the substances that life provided for us to increase our health. You know, one of the things is, you may find, oh well, I'm still young, 30s, 40s, and I can recover from colds and flus, even if it takes me a little while longer. The difficulty is, as you get a little bit older and your immune system becomes worse through years of abusing the antibiotics and through psychological stress, is that when something serious does happen, whether it's food poisoning or whether it's I don't know, some kind of sickness that's a little bit more serious than your average cold and flu, that you won't be able to fight it off, because as you get older into your 60s, 70s and 80s, the body obviously is going backwards, and you're naturally, the cycle of your cells is actually are dying. So in order to sustain your life longer, in order to keep the quality of the life through your health, you really need to look after your body, and one of the important parts of the body is the immune system. So not to go on, I've been going on a while for this one, but just to make it clear, how do you look after your immune system? Well, things like vitamin C is one of the most important food sources, and this is found in many different food sources. One of them being you know, lemons, oranges, various different fruits, various different vegetables. You only have to Google it these days and you'll have a whole list of things that are good for the body. So nature provided foods for this reason. There are many other foods that provide protection against other things. So For example, if you suffer with high blood pressure, coconut juice, the natural milk of a coconut is one of the best foods for high blood pressure, and so is bananas. They are also extremely good source of potassium, which potassium is very important for hydrating the body. Top athletes would often take the potassium in terms of supplements or in terms of a banana in order to increase the hydration of the body through extreme sports. So just from those examples alone, it's easy to see how nature provides us with very different food sources in order to look after the body. The question is, I could give you a whole list, but in actual fact, it's probably next week I'll be giving another talk on the different types of foods that you can include. But for today, the most important thing really is to understand, is to start at least to be aware of the reasons why you eat, because regardless of whether I give you a list or if I had a one-to-one with you, it was still, I can give you a health sheet, or I could sit with a one-to-one, look at your diet and change the way that you eat. But unless you actually care about the body enough, you're only going to be using it for a week or 2 weeks, and then we put aside in a drawer, and you'll be back to how you normally eat. So the main important thing for today is for you to understand from today on why you are eating. So it is when you wake up in the morning and you have your breakfast, presumably you have your breakfast, it is to understand in that moment, am I eating? And this is the same question you ask yourself in every mealtime. Am I eating for health, for hunger, for nutritional value, or am I eating for purely pleasure, or for emotional reasons? So it really, what it's doing, and it's not actually to try and stop yourself from doing it, because that doesn't work either. It's not to sit there and say, right, I'm upset now and I'm going to eat this biscuit and I mustn't do it because Donna says I'm eating for emotional reasons. It doesn't really work like that. What it works is that first and foremost, in order to get your eating right, or in order to change a destructive behavior, and food not eaten for the right reason becomes a destructive behavior. So in order for you to understand, in order for you to counteract destructive behaviors, the first thing you need to do is bring it to conscious awareness. So you ask yourself the question every time you're eating, why am I eating? Is it for hunger? And is it for nutrition? Is it for health? Or is it purely pleasure? And is it emotional reasons? If you see yourself becoming emotional and eating for that reason, that's fine. It's just to see it. You just simply become aware, become conscious, as the talk is called, that you are eating for that reason. And what happens is, over time, the more you become conscious of these habits, the more truth you will begin to see in them. So you'll get a greater understanding of what you are doing. Over time, what happens is it begins to stop. You drop. You start to see why you're eating, that it's for emotional reasons. And so there is something that registers in the mind and the body that, in actual fact, this food is not going to do anything for my emotional pain that I feel. And so you'll begin the attraction of food to eat for that reason will start to drop, because you've actually become aware of it. It is only the attraction of the compulsion to do something, whether it's drinking a glass of wine or smoking a cigarette or eating for emotional reasons, is only strong when there is a lack of awareness around why you're doing it. When you simply feel something and straight away run to something in order to get away from how you're actually feeling, without actually really looking at it. And when I say really looking at it, there's another side to this, and that is that you are to look at it without, no matter what you do, whether it's you drink the drink or you eat the food, and whether it's for emotional reason, or for pleasure or for nutrition value, whatever it is. But mainly what I'm talking about here is emotional reasons. If you see yourself grabbing for food for emotional reasons and you've done it, you've eaten it, the most important thing after that is not condemning yourself. If you condemn yourself for it, what you're actually going to do is increase the emotional pain that you feel right now. And this emotional pain will then rise up again. Maybe it might be in this moment, or it might be in another moment, it might be tomorrow. It will rise up again, and what you will find is you will want to run from that emotion again, and you will start eating again. So it ends up being a vicious circle. You're just a dog chasing its tail continually. So the most important thing is when you find yourself that you have actually eaten for the wrong reasons, if you like, whatever, don't try not to label it, but if for any other reason except bodily need, we can call it a bodily need. If you eat for any other reason than bodily need, so if it's for emotional greed, if you like, if you find yourself doing that, you have to just completely accept that this is what you have done, and it's okay to do that. You're in the process of breaking this habit, but you can only do that once you completely understand what it is that you're doing. And it's through the understanding, remember, that eventually what happens is attraction to the food stops, because you will simply look at that food, and in the space between feeling the emotion and looking at the food, you're going to have a space there, and in the space is the truth about the food, and that is that no matter what I eat, the pain in my stomach is not going to go away. And what happens then is the next time you look at you feel the anger, or you feel the emotion, you look at the food, it simply will not have that attraction. It's been broken through the truth. As the saying goes, as Jesus said, and I'm not religious, so I will teach many different areas on prophets and messengers in my talks, but as the saying goes, it's the realization of truth that will set you free. And this is the truth of it, it sets you free from your behavior. But it doesn't happen just like that, it takes time. And first and foremost, what it takes is conscious awareness of what you're doing. Secondly, what it takes is perseverance, so you must keep watching it, because for a while what you're going to find is simply just being conscious of it is not going to change the behavior straight away, because you've been doing this behavior for such a long time, and society teaches you this behavior. You only have to turn on the television to see people drinking or eating chips, burgers, basically all the stuff that the body can't even really digest, that contaminates the body. So obviously they're not eating for bodily need now, they're eating for some other reason. It's mind and emotional greed, meaning that it needs something. It's always this emptiness, I need. And so it's coming from the mind, and it's coming from emotion, it's not coming from the body. So when you're eating things that are hugely bad for the body, it's not the body that wants it. The body, in actual fact, will tell you afterwards, through the way that you feel after eating, that it didn't want it, because you'll get a sense of feeling sick, that the body will be sluggish, that you just simply won't feel that good. When you've eaten for the right reason, and because one, you eat the right food, and for two, afterwards, that you should be light, you should be energized, and the body should be able to digest the food fairly easily. So what happens is, after a while, when you stop eating for emotional reasons, you will begin to feel the sensitivity of the body much more easily, as you begin to eat for the right reasons. So from this day forward, then, just to put an end to today's talk, is the next time you eat is to ask yourself the question, or to become aware of why you're eating. The second most important thing, after you present that question to yourself, is to then become aware of what it is that you do after the food. So if the mind begins to have a go at yourself, primarily what you'll probably feel is an emotional reaction to not eating right. So you'll feel disgusted by yourself. You'll feel the emotion of it. This is not the most important thing. The most important thing is then what the mind does. So it's to become aware of what the mind starts to say to you afterwards. So if you find the mind condemning you, this is where the most important behavior comes in order to break the cycle of this destructive behavior. It is to tell yourself, you can use in the beginning until you bring the mind to working for the body as opposed to against it. You tell yourself that I'm doing the best that I can, which is the truth. You're not going to stop this behavior just like that. It's going to take time. Because the body has been doing this behavior for such a long time, and you have the societal conditioning of eating for the wrong reasons. So it is a monumental task that you're trying to overcome. So it is to have patience with yourself, it is to have compassion with yourself, and it is also to have, most importantly, understanding. And the understanding is that if you condemn yourself, the very pain that is in you right now, which is grabbing for that food, making you eat for emotional reasons, the very condemnation of the self is going to create more of that pain, which is going to make it harder for you the next time to resist eating again for emotional reasons. And what you're trying to do is to dissolve pain inside yourself, to allow yourself to feel it and dissolve it, so that eventually pain rises and you simply allow it to be there and you allow it to go, and then you're back in peace in yourself again, as opposed to feeling the pain, running from it with destructive behavior, then condemning yourself. So there's the pain, and using, I don't want to feel this pain, so you grab for the food and you eat the food, and then you self-condemnation yourself. So there's the pain, and every time you condemn yourself, the pain gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And then what happens is you've had enough of the food and you get distracted by something else. So the pain that you've just created more of comes back into the body, and it sits there and lies dormant for a while until something else triggers it. Maybe tomorrow somebody says something, you do something, whatever it is, and up rises this pain. And it's not this that it was yesterday, it's now this, because you added more to it, because it's so powerful, because it's much bigger now, because you're used to not dealing with it and running from it. This is now going to be the destructive source to make you run and use food again in order to create some kind of pleasure, or in order to run from this pain. And then, of course, afterwards you will then begin the self-condemnation again. So the pain gets bigger, gets back down again, gets triggered again the next day, and now it's this big. And this continues over and over again. So the point is to become aware of why you're eating, and to become even more aware of what you do with yourself after you have eaten for the so-called wrong reasons. When the mind comes in to condemn you, you turn around, because now you understand the risk of allowing that to happen, and the very fact that it's just creating tomorrow's pain, tomorrow's destructive behavior. As you turn around to yourself and you say to yourself, I am doing the best I can in this moment, knowing that if you simply allow this pain to come off and allow it to go, and have self-acceptance and compassion, that this destructive behavioral pattern will eventually disappear. So thank you for listening, and I will be posting again on Donna D Total Health Facebook when I'll be giving my next talk. Thank you and goodbye.